We have a series of breaking news developments tonight in the killing of Trayvon Martin. The Office of the Special Prosecutor in the case released a notice to the media at 8:15 tonight that sometime within the next 72 hours, the prosecutor will, quote, hold a news conference regarding the case. End quote. That news conference could be Special Prosecutor Angela Corey's moment to announce that she has concluded her investigation and reached a decision on filing charges in the case. That means the subject of the investigation, George Zimmerman, now has less than 70 hours to find a new defense lawyer after his team of lawyers abruptly quit the case this afternoon because they have completely lost contact with their client.
We are withdrawing as counsel for Mr. Zimmerman. We've lost contact with him up to this point. We've had contact every day. He's gone on his own. I'm not sure what he's doing or who he's talking to, but at this point, we're withdrawing as counsel.
Benjamin Crump, an attorney for Trayvon Martin's family, responded with alarm earlier tonight on MSNBC's Politics Nation.
We are really worried about him being a flight risk. Again, the killer of Trayvon Martin is unaccountable for. Nobody knows where the killer of Trayvon Martin is.
Zimmerman's lawyers said that Sunday was the last time either of them had any form of contact with Zimmerman. But after Zimmerman stopped communicating with his attorneys, he did reach out on his own to at least two other people, Special Prosecutor Angela Corey, who refused to speak with him, and Zimmerman's TV best friend, Sean Hannity.
Eventually, the two newest developments are that we learned that he had called Sean Hannity of Fox News directly, not through us, and we believe, I can't confirm this, we believe that he spoke directly with Sean off the record, and he's not even willing to tell us what our client told him.
Within the hour, Sean Hannity said this.
I want to set the record straight about a couple of things. Now, for a few weeks, we have been pursuing an interview with Mr. Zimmerman to give him a chance to tell his side of the story. Now, yesterday, I was contacted by an individual that we, in fact, believe was George Zimmerman. He reached out to me. We spoke on the phone about his case, and I agreed not to report on the contents of that conversation. That's it. I know nothing about his relationship with his now former attorneys.
In the Zimmerman defense team's unprecedentedly strange 45-minute press conference today, they said not one word to reassure authorities that George Zimmerman has not fled the country.
In this case, I will not tell you where George Zimmerman is because I don't know. But for those who are engaged in the late Easter egg hunt looking for him, you can stop looking in Florida. Look much further away than that, which is also a reason why we didn't meet with him, because it was simply not reasonable.
Joining me now is Charles M. Blow, New York Times opinion writer, Natalie Jackson, attorney for Trayvon Martin's family, and Joy-Ann Reid, MSNBC contributor and managing editor of The Grio. Natalie Jackson, I want to go to your legal experience on this. I have never seen a press conference by defense attorneys like this ever. They have no idea where their client is. It seems to me that the reason they had to do this press conference is that they are now worried about protecting their own licenses to practice law in your state. That they need to make sure that if this client has fled the jurisdiction and fled the country, that they are making it very clear to the special prosecutor that they have had nothing to do with that and have not been a party to that.
It does seem as though they're distancing themselves. This was a very strange press conference. When we heard about it, we speculated about all the things this press conference could be, and it turned out far different than we thought it would be. You know, this press conference basically confirmed what we thought about George Zimmerman, that he's a nonconformist and that he has a defiant attitude about this and about this case.
Let's listen to what one of the lawyers, Craig Sonner, said just last week about what would happen if an arrest warrant was issued in this case. Let's listen to this.
We're keeping track of him. Law enforcement isn't keeping track of him. He's not hiding out. He's hiding out from law enforcement. He's hiding out from the people who are trying to kill him, actually.
Charles Blow, turns out absolutely no truth to that when it really had any meaning, which is this week.
I'm so happy that you started with Natalie to get the formal legal opinion, because I just think this whole thing is nuts. That's just my opinion. I mean, it is so ridiculous at this point. No one at this, when you get down to brass tacks, the big question is, where is George Zimmerman? If his attorneys or his ex-attorneys, who never seem to have had a retainer with him, never actually met him face to face, do not know, because they have seen him in wherever place he is, where he is, don't know where he is. And if the special prosecutor has not met with him face to face, and it would be hard to imagine that the special prosecutor would meet with George Zimmerman without his attorneys present. And if they haven't seen him, that means that the special prosecutor is very likely to not have seen George Zimmerman face to face. That means that we do not know. We have no assurances that anyone knows where George Zimmerman is. I am hoping that the state's attorney will step to a mic within this 72 hours and say how it is that we as the public can be assured that somebody is keeping track of George Zimmerman, because the man is not charged with a crime at this point. So he is free to move as he pleases. They haven't heard from him in two days. And they want to break up the relationship that they never really had, because they never really seem to have known this man in the first place. His father should be giving him some advice. He's supposed to be a retired judge, and he's giving all kinds of interviews behind a screen like he's a character from The Golden Child. Well, why don't you talk to your son and tell him how to behave when you are being investigated for homicide? Something is really off the rails here, and it does not make sense, and it's just crazy.
Roland Martin reported today that he contacted Joe Oliver, who had been working as a spokesman for George Zimmerman, kind of up until Charles and I interviewed him, and he didn't perform too well on it. But he told Roland Martin that he texted George Zimmerman today, did not get a reply, but texted him saying, "I think you're making bad decisions." We also have, I think, some tape ready to go on the lawyers today talking about what they think George Zimmerman's current state of mind is. They think he may be in some way mentally incapacitated at this point. Let's listen to that.
Shaking babies. When you shake a baby, you can't shake me, I'm too fat. But if you get me on the ground, you can hit my head into it and accomplish the same thing, which is to smack my brain around inside the skull. That would put any reasonable person in reasonable fear of serious physical injury, and under Florida law, that entitles you to use any force, including deadly force, to defend yourself.
Okay, that was not the clip I was looking for. We have so many clips from this news conference, but there is one I'm going to try to find here where he talks about, the lawyers talk about his state of mind, Zimmerman's state of mind, and they think he's got post-traumatic stress syndrome, and he's in a condition where they do not trust his judgment in any way. But Natalie Jackson, I want to get back to you on one legal point. What do you make of what is being reported now that Zimmerman tried to contact the special prosecutor directly, tried to get her on the phone, and she refused to speak with him? Legally, why would she do that?
Because he's represented by counsel. As far as she understood, he was represented by counsel, and you cannot speak to a defendant who's represented by counsel. She did the ethical and the proper thing by not speaking to him.
Joy-Ann Reid joining us from Sanford, Florida tonight. You've done a lot of great on-the-ground reporting there. Are there any developments? Is there any kind of notion about where George Zimmerman is? Is there any word coming that there might be other lawyers lining up to represent him at this point?
Well, Lawrence, we certainly haven't heard that. I mean, and I did ask Craig Sonner during that press conference, you know, if in fact he has lost track of George Zimmerman, how he can then assure the public, the press, you know, and the prosecutors that if he were to be asked to turn himself in, that he would even do it. He didn't really have an answer for that other than to say, well, he knows his phone number. As was previously stated, they've never even met George Zimmerman face to face, the two attorneys. I can tell you, Lawrence, that I did check George Zimmerman's website, the website that he put up on his own, again, without the lawyers being involved. They were working on getting a website for him. That website was updated today at 1:30 this afternoon. So a few hours before that press conference, we did have someone update that website. So if George Zimmerman is doing his own website, then he has internet access. That's about all we know. They did indicate he's not in Florida.
And Joy-Ann Reid, that update on the website was just a very simple thank you to supporters. And as I understand it, the website also took down a photograph that was of some graffiti that was on a black student center at a college, as graffiti supporting
At Ohio
Zimmerman.
State University, correct.
Yeah, that's been the only activity on this website.
That is all that has changed. But other than that, right,
and the lawyers acknowledged to us that website is actually maintained by George Zimmerman. Charles Blow, we heard these lawyers spend over a week very bombastically, very confidently asserting to this country exactly what the facts are in this case, asserting without any actual evidentiary support for it, beyond their word, that George Zimmerman's nose was broken, his head was wounded, making all sorts of bold assertions about the fact base of this case. And they were doing that, we now know, without ever having met their client, without ever having had an opportunity to evaluate from him the credibility of any of this information that they were selling to any TV interviewer who they could get to accept it. And here we are today discovering they really had no idea what they were doing all along, and ultimately tonight have no idea where their client is.
It is the most outrageous thing that I have seen in recent memory as it relates to a kind of criminal trial. So you, for a whole week, you told us that your client was completely credible, and then today you stand in front of a microphone and say he might be crazy. What are we to believe? Did you have any basis for either one of those judgments? I think not. I have never fully believed anything that was coming from these attorneys. And in fact, what it seems to me is that they are a little bit kind of hungry for the limelight, because at the end of the press conference, they said, if George were to reach out and contact us, we'd come back. Fame is a monster, and they have been bitten by that. They want to be part of this big case, and they are kind of throwing George under the bus in order to get him to come back to them. It's a very odd situation, but I don't believe that we can really take what they say, which is what some people were doing, taking what they said pretty much as the voice of George Zimmerman and them having some credibility in being able to make the assertions that they were making. And I do not believe that they were valid, because they have never laid eyes on this man. And now you are telling us, you just told us you think he's suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder. You're basically saying that he is losing his mind, but up until that moment you believed everything that he said. Something does not add up. Both of those things cannot be true.
Well, I got to say, if George Zimmerman has been watching his lawyers' appearances on television, I think from a rational perspective, he had every good, solid reason to fire them. Natalie Jackson, Charles M. Blow, and Joy-Ann Reid, thank you all very much for joining me tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Coming up, we're going to have more on the breaking news on the killing of Trayvon Martin with Jonathan Capehart and former federal prosecutor from Florida, Kendall Coffey. And later, Rick Santorum is dropping out of the presidential campaign before a possible humiliation in his home state of Pennsylvania. That means the Obama re-election campaign can no longer count on Republicans to attack the now inevitable nominee, Mitt Romney. That's coming up.